Spurgeon here with RevZilla, and today I am in Portugal where I'm getting to ride the new Triumph Scrambler 1200. And this is a bike that when it was released, Triumph made some pretty bold claims touting its off-road capabilities, and that prompted Lemmy and Joe to sit down in the studio and hash out what a Scrambler really is. And that's important because Joe actually races vintage Scramblers. And the conclusion they came to was that this is actually more of a naked adventure bike based on the spec sheet. And that's the hypothesis that I'm here to test out today is the new Scrambler 1200 more of a naked adventure bike with those upgraded off-road capabilities. And we're gonna ride it off-road as well as on to really come to a final conclusion. We'll check in with you at the end, but for right now, let's get out and ride. All right, so to check this thing out off-road, I want to focus on three main areas: suspension, electronics, and ergonomics. So the suspension on this is going to be a fully adjustable Showa fork up front, and then it's got Öhlins out back, again, fully adjustable, preload, compression, rebound, the whole 9 yards. You know, the average adventure bike right now is running somewhere around I'd say around 8 to 8.5 inches of suspension travel, and you're getting a lot of adjustability. So by that scope, this thing is right on spec with any of the modern ADV bikes out there. And really, it's one of the most competent suspensions that I've ridden. I mean, the base XC is like 7.9 inches of travel, whereas the XE that I'm on right now is like 9.7 inches of travel. You can take some of these jumps and you can really loft the bike. I already got yelled at once for doing that.
You are a good rider and you want to experiment, we can go to level 2. I don't want people being here, going fast along, jumping. Yeah. It's not the bike done for this, eh?
Naughty, naughty, Dunbar. Naughty, naughty. But now from the electronic standpoint, same thing. I mean, when you get up into the XE version, which gets an IMU, I mean, it's got one of the most competent electronics packages on the market. One of the things that I really like is that I'm just in base off-road mode right now, which is the same for the XC as well as the XE. And what I think is really cool about the off-road traction control, normally I just turn traction control completely off, but like coming up this hill right here, if you pull back harder on the throttle, it actually gives you more slip out of the traction control. Works really well, really intuitively. So I really thought out electronics package with this. There's a ton of really cool stuff in here. We'll dive more into the electronics in the article, but what you need to know is from an ADV off-road standpoint, man, this thing measures up big time with the current crop of ADV bikes that are out there. Now the final thing is the ergonomics. You got nice tall bars. The XE does have a slightly wider bar, but I'm able to comfortably stand up, comfortably ride, comfortably sit down. And you know, normally I have to tweak some stuff. Felt really comfortable right out of the gate. If you remember when I was talking about in the F850 video, I was having a hard time getting my foot on the rear brake, getting under the shift lever. I didn't make any adjustments to this, and it worked out just fine. Super impressive. I think Triumph did a great job with this bike, and I think for people that are looking for something a little bit more retro themed, they're gonna be pretty impressed with what they're finding with this from an off-road standpoint. But an adventure bike also has to go on-road, right? So we know it's pretty decent off-road. Let's see how this thing handles itself on the street. So we're out on the street and the rain has set in, and the biggest glaring difference between this and a regular adventure bike is the fact that there is no wind protection, no windscreen, no fairings, no nothing. So we're getting all of it right here. The biggest note that I have on this bike from the street as well as off-road is really the engine. Massive amounts of torque, like 81 foot-pounds of torque that hit right off idle. Not a large power band. You can see the red line is 7,000 RPM, and power really starts to taper off around 6,000 RPM. But man, it's just this big flat torque plateau, a straight line of torque straight across the rev range. So the engine feels like it's pulling at all times, and it just leads to a really kind of fun, sporty experience. You know, if you're just looking at the overall horsepower number of I think it's like 89 horsepower, it's not going to seem that impressive. but the torque really does make up for it. And unlike some of the other adventure bikes out there, like the 1090, the Tiger 800, the F850 GS, where you really have to spin the power out of it, this power, like I said, is right there, right off Vital. So if you like all that torque up front, this is going to be an impressive machine. The other thing that's super impressive is the brakes on this. They went with the M50 Brembos, the same brake setup that's on the Street Triple RS. So massive stopping power. And if you upgrade to the XE, you also get those MCS levers. Really just an impressive overall going and stopping from this bike. Now, the final thing to note here on the street really is just the overall electronics package as it affects a street rider. It's one of those things where we talked about the electronics from an off-road perspective, but when you're looking at it here, you do have all kinds of new connectivity. You're going to be able to connect via the Triumph app to have all of the turn-by-turn directions from Google. Google Maps coming right through on the screen. You're also going to be able to connect GoPros. You can see I've got multiple GoPros set up right now. And then of course you've got class-leading traction control, ABS. If you get up to the XE, that's where you get an IMU added in, so lean angle sensitive ABS and traction control. Overall, bike is really impressive on the street. So we're gonna ride, see if we can get out of this rain, get a hot cup of coffee, and we'll check in with you guys in a bit.
Pacers?
Alright, so sometimes at these launches, things do not go as planned, and we have run into a few snafus out here on the road, which has kind of held us up from getting back to the hotel. So we're all trying to make it back in time to catch our flights, which means we might not have time to do a stand-up. So we're going to do this right here. We started off this video by talking about a hypothesis that Joe and Lemmy formed, that the Scrambler 1200 is really nothing more than a naked adventure bike. And that is a hypothesis that has proved to be correct based on all the testing we've done over the past 2 days. I mean, the engine, the suspension, the electronics, the brakes, this is a top-notch premium bike. And because of that, it commands a top-notch premium price according to Triumph. You're looking at around $14,000 for the base XC and $15,400 for the XE. Now, there is a lot that went into these bikes, and I tried as hard as I could to find nitpicks, and I found a few. The brake cables stick out a little bit far, which I think can be problematic when riding off-road. We had a radiator get clogged up with mud, and the bike overheated, and that was because it was outfitted with the high fender kit, which looks cool, but was allowing a lot of mud through. Ergonomics, well, I think this thing is really top-notch out of the box. From the majority of the ergonomic standpoint, I do feel the bike's a bit wide, and it does take a little bit of getting used to when you are riding it off-road in the standing position. But really, you know, when you're looking at all the pros versus the cons, I think Triumph knocked it out of the park with this bike. And I mean, it's an excellent styled option for somebody that doesn't want that traditional looking adventure bike. No, you won't be able to pack it with luggage and a passenger in the same way that you've done with maybe an R1200 GS or even, you know, a Tiger 800 XC or something along those lines. But really, I mean, I've driven cross country on a Bonneville T100. There's really nothing stopping you from doing long haul riding on this bike, in addition to, you know, all of the off-roading you could possibly want to tackle. Now, it's not a dirt bike, but it is going to be on point with all the adventure bikes out there in that middleweight segment. And to really dive into how this bike compares not only to all of the adventure bikes out there as well, I want to talk about how it compares to the XC and the XE, what these bikes look like next to each other. But I'm not going to have time to do it right now. But I promise you a really thorough first ride review over on Common Tread. So make sure you head over check out that article, and as always, subscribe to us on YouTube to keep up with all the content we have rolling out at RevZilla.com. I want to thank you for joining us for this first ride review of the Triumph Scrambler 1200 here in Portugal. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.